Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go live on YouTube, and let me just kind of confirm. Okay, it looks like our stream is now live on YouTube in addition to being on Crowdcast. Okay, so we are here. We're on YouTube, and it's time to get into the AP Euro exam. Y'all ready? All right, 0 docs. Yeah, y'all wish. Wouldn't that be nice if there were 0 documents? Okay, that would be kind of funny, wouldn't it? All right. Okay, so I've got my tea ready, and we are ready to go ahead and start talking about this year's exam. But let me go ahead and get my tea here so y'all know that it's real, right? Okay, so hey there, students. Tom Richey here, and we are going to talk about the latest changes that have been announced to the 2020 AP European History exam. Okay, so now first off, we want to know when that exam is. And that exam is going to be a week later than originally anticipated. Okay, so as far as when the exam is going to be, and let me make sure that I am, not giving you any false information or anything like that. I want to have this in front of me. This stuff changes so much. Wednesday, May 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so make sure you understand that Wednesday, May 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern. I've just shared a graphic that my friends at Marco Learning created on Instagram. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Tom Richey, Snapchat Tom Richey SC. So as far as that goes, the exam is going to be Wednesday, May 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Now, everybody's going to take this exam at the same time, okay? So everybody's going to take the exam at the same time. And, so if you are on the West Coast, make sure that you know that that's going to be at 1 o'clock. Okay. If you're in Hawaii, it's going to be even earlier. If you're an international student, it could be interesting. Okay. So it's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, May 13th. Okay, want to make sure I'm not giving anybody false information. Now, this exam for AP Euro is going to be a 5-document DBQ. Okay, so let me go ahead and AP Euro DBQ. Let's go ahead and search for that. I'm going to give y'all a link to my new DBQ rubric. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put that. All right. Yeah, thank you everybody for showing up here on YouTube. Also, those of you who are on Crowdcast, let me go ahead and put a link. My AP Euro DBQ page has been updated, okay? It's been updated with a new rubric specifically for the AP Euro exam, okay? So let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, so now one thing, we don't want to write off outside information. Okay, now before we go into the rubric, I also want to note that my friends at Marco Learning have a full schedule of AP exams. So not just for AP Euro, but a full schedule of all AP exams. Hey there, Ryan. And I'm going to share those in the chats. Okay, so we want to note that my friends at Marco Learning have revised 2020 AP exam dates. Okay, so just noting we've got a very detailed analysis here. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to go over the expectations. Okay, we're going to go over the expectations of this exam. Okay. So as far as that goes, we are now screen sharing. And so first of all, make sure that you click that link. If you go to marcolearning.com, you're going to be able to see, come on now. Okay, I'm trying to focus my screen on here. Okay, so you can see a full list of exam dates. Okay, so this is also showing this is the exact time. Okay, so we've got 3 different times where these exams will start, either 12 p.m., 2 p.m., or 4 p.m. Eastern. Okay, and kind of shows you all the way to Hawaii. Now, as far as that goes, I've given you a link. If you Google AP Euro DBQ, you can go to my DBQ page, or AP Euro DBQ rubric. You can skip all that stuff from the College Board, right? Just go to the 3rd link there, and there you'll find me. And on my DBQ page, I've put a 2020 rubric here. And we see here that the AP Euro exam rubric. Now, if you've been learning the DBQ rubric, which I hope that you have, it's not anything that is fundamentally different. It's just the amounts that change. Okay, so it is now a 10-point rubric rather than a 7-point rubric, but there are no new requirements. There's nothing new that you would be expected to do that you otherwise wouldn't have been expected to do. There's nothing that was deleted from the rubric. Okay, they've just modified it for 5 documents, and so now you will be assessed a little bit differently. Now, also note the time period for this rubric is now 1450 to 1914. Now, typically, the Renaissance and the early Reformation are not subject to being on the DBQ, okay? So the Renaissance and early Reformation pre-1600 are not subject to be on the DBQ typically. But in this case, instead of a 1600 to 2000 range for the DBQ, it is now 1450 to 1914. So make sure that you understand that the Renaissance and the early Reformation are still subject to the DBQ. Okay, so this exam can go anywhere from 1450 to 1914. Now, the contextualization and thesis points, they remain unchanged. Okay, so they are exactly as they always have been. So there is no change for contextualization and thesis. Okay, now where we start to see the changes, first of all, there are only 5 documents here. Okay, so I've got, instead of 7 documents, we've got 5 documents, and then I've got a little place for the total. Okay, so describes, supports, and explains. Okay, so first of all, for the first point, instead of 3 documents, it is only requiring you to accurately describe the content of at least 2 documents. So the only change that we're seeing here is we go from 3 documents to 2 documents. All right. So, and that's basically what I call the I love lamp point, that you are, from Anchorman, if any of y'all have seen that, where he is, are you looking at the lamp and saying that you love it, or do you really love the lamp? And in this case, you are just showing that you understand what the documents say. Now, remember, you can't quote here, but paraphrasing 2 documents, putting them into your own words, showing that you understand what you read, there's a point. Now, the argument support point has been now subdivided. Okay, so supports an argument in response to the prompt by using at least 2 1-point or 4 2-points documents. So basically, if you use 2 documents to support an argument, then you get a point here. Now, if you use 4 documents, so all but 1, typically, it's the all but 1. On the regular rubric, 6 out of 7. Now you can get 2 points for the all but 1, the 4 out of 5. So that's going to be changing a little bit just in the amount, okay, just in the amount. And then for 1 or 2 documents, explains how or why the document's point of view, purpose, historical situation, and or audience is relevant to an argument. So you can get, you can get a point here for doing your POV plus on 1 document. You can get 2 points for doing it on a second document. Okay, so that's something that up to 2 points there. Now, what we see here is the outside evidence point. Now, somebody said in the chat, well, it's a DBQ. I don't have to worry about outside evidence, do I? Wrong. Okay, you do have to worry about outside evidence, and in fact, they have altered this, so now you can get up to 2 points for 2 pieces of outside evidence. So it is no longer a matter of, hey, I just need 1 piece of outside evidence. Now, remember, these pieces of outside evidence need to be explained. Okay, there needs to be something here explaining what's going on there. Okay, that you don't need to just name drop. The same thing is the same criteria as we've always had. But now you can use 2 pieces of outside evidence, a first point for 1, second point for 2. The complex understanding point remains unchanged, okay? And on the DBQ, what we want to note here is the easiest way, like the path of least resistance, is to either, I would say here that you are looking at qualifying or modifying an argument by considering diverse or alternative views of or evidence. And remember, explaining nuance, okay, getting into a nuanced argument. Now, we're going to get into some more specific test preppy kind of stuff later, but I wanted to make sure that today we know exactly what the expectations are, okay? So we're going to do things that are a bit more concrete later, okay? Those of you who are on my email list, you will see some, and of course, if you're following me on Twitter or Instagram, tomorrow, Saturday, I will be doing some webinars with Marco Learning. So you want to go ahead and sign up for those. If you're following me on social media, you will get more information on that. If you are looking at this broadcast later on, then you will be able to see that information. And I should be able to send a link if my friends at Marco send that to me. Okay, so with that, let me go ahead and, I'm cutting off the screen share and I'm going to go ahead and start answering questions. Now, this rubric is going to be the same for the AP histories in general, but it is not the same for AP Gov. Okay, AP Gov's not going to have a DBQ. So understand that this rubric, the essence of the rubric is going to apply to any of the AP histories, AP US history, AP US government, see, y'all got me on government. Okay. AP US history, AP European history, AP world history. There we go. All right. So as far as that goes, yeah, if my friends at Marco Learning are watching and they send me a direct link to register for tomorrow's webinar, I'll go ahead and put that up there. So let's go ahead and get into the questions. Okay, Jorge is asking, will there be a curve? Okay, now, the AP exams are always scaled, okay? So the way this is going to work is there are going to be 10 points. So they've made the grading a bit more diverse because this is the only assessment. So every student will get something between 0 and 10 points. Now, before the reading, they don't decide. This is going to be a 5, this is going to be a 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. Now, think about it this way, when they said open book, open notes, and then they come back and they're like, here are your open notes as a DBQ. And so with that, kind of savage. Now, if y'all want me to see me do the savage challenge dance, go to my TikTok. So I am on TikTok, so go ahead and look at that if you want to see that. But I thought the College Board was in a savage mood. You're not going to have time to look around at a bunch of notes and stuff like that. You are going to be in a time crunch for this. And keep in mind that there's going to be an even spread of like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. After the reading, they're going to figure out, okay, this is, sure, a 10 is going to be a 5, right? Probably a 9 or an 8 or something like that will be a 5, but they're going to decide after they see how all the cards have fallen, okay? So they've got a committee after the reading that looks at it, and they're going to decide, where did each of these scores cut off? Okay, so as far as that goes, the AP exam is always scaled. It is never, it is never going to be something that is, like that they've had a preconceived notion of that. So yeah, they're always scaled. That happens every year. Now, I've just put up a link for the Marco Learning webinar for students and parents tomorrow. Teachers that are on my email list have gotten a link to the teacher webinar, but this is something here that if you'll click on that link that says bigmarker.com, Marco Learning, that is going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, April 4th. Okay, so that's going to be important as far as really getting deeper into it. Okay, we're going to get deeper into it there. So going with that, Nimra, is it open book? Okay, now we're going to need to talk about strategies for this open book. Now, strictly speaking, there is nothing that is going to stop you from consulting other sources, but remember that it is timed. Okay, you don't have a lot of time to consult sources. Now, one thing I'm thinking about doing, one thing that would be good for you is to think about for each historical period, like I would break AP Euro up into periods of about 50 to 100 years. And you'll be getting some stuff from me. I'll go into these strategies, okay? Because the College Board has sanctioned using notes, so I'm not telling you to cheat or anything like that. But I would break the course into like 50 or 100-year increments and put down like maybe 3 to 5 key events or people or something like that, so that you've got something to look at depending on the time frame of the DBQ, so that then you can see, okay, what didn't show up in the document. So we're going to put out some stuff between, yeah, it's not cheating because it's something that the College Board is saying that you can have something to look at, so it's being smart. But you don't want to be Googling during this time, okay? So that's something to note here. Now, Renee, you've got a good question here. I'm going to go ahead and ask that as a question, and we will get to that, okay? So the rest of this is going to be pretty much Q&A, but now we want to make sure that for your notes, you have some very brief notes that you've already put together. You don't want to be rifling through your notebook or looking at the index of the textbook. You're not going to get the topic and then have like 10 or 15 minutes to like familiarize yourself with it. Now, I would speculate that the topics are going to be accessible, that they're not going to go too obscure with these topics. So I think that having basic knowledge of these things is going to be fine. Yeah, I don't think, Jamie, I don't think that we're going to be looking at a ridiculously obscure topic, okay? That's not something that I think that we're going to see. All right, so with that, and again, make sure that y'all have the link to my AP Euro DBQ page, which includes a link to this year's rubric. I'm posting that again on YouTube for those people who have just joined us there. For those of you who are on Crowdcast, now if you want to come into the Crowdcast, crowdcast.io/Tom Richey, and I'm paying a little bit more attention to the Q&A there. So if you want to come into the Crowdcast, if you're an AP Euro student, then go ahead and get into that, okay? But remember that AP exams are always scaled, and they will decide 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Will the 45 minutes include reading time? I don't think so. I think that now this is something we're awaiting just a little bit more clarification here, okay? But as far as I know, okay, as far as I know, this is not going to include a reading period. That really you're probably only going to have about 40 minutes to put this whole thing together, okay? That you're only going to have about 40 minutes. Now, if I'm putting bad information out there, somebody let me know. I'm certainly open to correcting myself. We are, information's kind of still dripping out, okay? I'm just making sure to get everything to y'all as soon as I can, okay? So with that, yeah, I would expect, okay, I would expect here that we are, that the 45 minutes is basically all that you're going to have. Okay, so when we look at this here, wait just 1 second. I'm going to need to pull up something real quick and make sure we've got some new information about this. Okay, so as far as that goes, certain courses, let's see. So when we look at the histories, taking the exam schedules. Let me just take a quick look at this and see what we've got here. Yeah, that this is really okay. 45 minutes long with an additional 5 minutes for uploading. So strictly speaking, you are going to have, from the time you see the prompt, it looks like you're going to have 50 minutes to get it uploaded, okay? So that's going to be something that I think is going to be very important. Just understanding that you are only going to have 45 minutes to do this, okay? That's the best information we have. Sophia, yes, it's still going to be from 1 to 5, okay? So when you see a 10-point rubric, they're going to decide after the essays are scored, they're going to decide, where do we cut off a 5? Where do we cut off a 4? 3, 2, 1. So I'm thinking in terms of, I don't want to do too much guesswork here, but we are going to have to kind of think about that if you're going for a 5, how many points, okay? And so I'm thinking that a 5 will probably be, 9 or 8 or 9 points. If I were just to speculate, a 5 will probably be either 8 or 9 points. A 4 will probably be like 7 or 8. And then, well, actually, I would say 6 to 8. And then a 3, I would think you'll probably be able to get, if we think about 3 out of 7 is enough. I would think that for this, you're probably going to need to shoot for at least a 5 out of 10 to pass this exam. That would be my guess. So if I had to guess, I would probably say 5, 7, 9. That would probably be what my, if I were just to guess what this is going to look like, that a 3 is probably going to be 5 points, a 4 is going to be 7 points, and a 5 is going to be 9 points. That would be a rough estimate. I'm not speaking with any authority. The College Board does not yet know this. They're going to have to see how does this go, but there's going to be a selection of 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. So don't y'all get overconfident about this. Now, should it still be 5 paragraphs? I think if you can do that in the time allowed, I think that's great. There may be a 4-paragraph format that's going to be good as well. If you make sure that you're following me and following my friends at Marco Learning, so make sure that you are following, make sure you're following at Tom Richey and at Marco Learning, okay, because we're going to be putting information out there, okay, so make sure that you understand that we're going to get deeper and deeper into strategy. This is new information, okay, so I'm going to be getting together with John this weekend at Marco, and John and I are going to be strategizing. I don't know if John wants to jump in on this broadcast. He's certainly welcome to do that if he's watching. So, but with this, we're going to go into different strategies. I think that if you can turn out the 5-paragraph essay, I think that that's still going to work. Okay. Now, can it be handwritten or strictly typed? Okay. Now we'll get more into device issues at another time. Okay. I want to make sure that I know all of the ins and outs. From what I can understand. Okay. So let me see what we've got here that you will be able to type and upload. Okay, so I'm going to take that. There's something directly in the College Board email that I'm going to go ahead and paste here. Okay, so students will be able to take exams on any device they have access to, computer, tablet, or smartphone. They'll be able to type and upload their responses or write responses by hand and submit a photo via their cell phones. Okay, so you are able, which my whole thing, it's a written test. It can be a written or a type test depending. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share this in the chat. That you are going to be able to either type your responses, which that's going to be a different dynamic here now, isn't it? Or you can upload your responses by phone. Okay, so you can do that as well. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and send that into the chat. Okay, and I'll make sure to put that in the YouTube chat as well. Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll make sure that we have all of that. Oh, I've got actually too much here for the YouTube chat. Okay, so we're going to put that there and we'll continue the quote here. Okay, so that's what we've got there. Okay, hey there, Vanessa. And Vanessa is here in the Euro chat. Usually she's with us in APUSH. So yeah, it can be handwritten or typed depending on your device. And you need to kind of think about what would be better for you. Okay, you're going to have to figure out, is it better to type or is it better to handwrite? Some of y'all, you're probably going to want to practice it both ways because some of y'all type faster than others. If you're slow at typing, you may want to think about, like for me, obviously typed would be better because I can get in there and I can do like 80 words a minute. You probably want to get on the internet and think about, and that's something that, when John and I are discussing strategy, we might kind of try to think about what is a word per minute that would be, okay, you probably need to type. But if you don't know how to type, then you probably want to do the handwritten essay, take a picture of it and go with that. Okay, so the extra time to upload the response. So yes, James, what we're getting from the College Board is that there's going to be this time that you're going to spend uploading. So most of the exams, it looks like, are going to be 45 minutes, plus you're going to have 5 minutes to upload. And so, yeah, you've got to think about now, you want to think about this. Yeah, typing could be more likely for, some kind of glitch, to be subject to some sort of glitch. So that may be something that you want to look into there. Okay. And speaking of, of John at Marco, let's go ahead and okay, let's go ahead and invite John to come on live with us. I'm going to be doing some broadcasts tomorrow with my friends at Marco Learning. And so John is, going to be lending some of his expertise. He's got his ear to the ground. He's got a lot of experience in the test prep world. Yeah, some of y'all know John. So AJ, John. John's going to be joining us in just a little bit. And so what will happen if a student's internet goes out? The College Board, Stephen, is certainly thinking about this. Okay, it's not, yeah, they know that there are going to be some internet outages. Let's wait about the technical stuff. Let's just make your questions relevant to AP Euro, okay? Because generally, the questions will be getting emails from the College Board and your AP coordinator. So make sure, John, we've got a little bit of echo over on your end.
Okay, let me just see if I can mute myself.
Yeah, so we may just mute you when you're not talking. Because yeah, my voice is coming up on your thing there. All right, Strawberry, some of y'all know who John is. Excellent. Okay, bring on Marco. John, is Marco able to join us on this broadcast? So we'll see. We'll see. You might have to come to the Marco broadcast tomorrow if you want to see Marco. We'll see. Okay, so let's give priority. And those of you who are upvoting, let's upvote questions that are about the AP Euro exam. Let's not get so much into some of the technical questions right now because we want to address AP Euro. All right, so John, what are your thoughts after looking at this? This is a lot of new information to process very suddenly here. Let's see, waiting on John to reconnect. Okay, so John is going to reconnect with us. And let's see here. So we're going to, okay, it looks like we might have lost John. Press F to pay respects. Okay, but John will be back at some point, but make sure y'all sign up for so we see here that he may be connecting again. Okay, let's see what other questions we've got. How can you practice this in order to ensure mastery? Again, I'm going to be sending out practice materials. Marco Learning is going to be sending out practice materials. Between me, between Marco, between the College Board, I think you're going to have plenty of practice items. And again, I'm going to recommend that you handwrite one. You do one typed. You try the different ways of doing this and you figure out what's going to work best for you, because some of you are going, now the students like me who had messy handwriting and are really fast typers or typists, or how do you say that? Okay. But if you type really, really fast and you have messy handwriting, no brainer, go type. Okay. If you have neat handwriting, you can't type, then, that's an obvious thing too. Some of you are going to have to think about this. Okay. Some of you will need to think about it. So with that, we're going to, have some things going on. Now, Mr. Good, I think that that's something that, cutting out random sources from existing DBQs. Now, it's kind of like surgery. What we need to make sure when we're cutting two documents out of existing DBQs, we want to make sure that we're preserving the student's ability to argue and all that. But yeah, I will probably write a few DBQs from scratch between now and the exam. We've got about 6 weeks to do this, 5 or 6 weeks to do this. So I will very likely be writing some things from scratch. I think that my friends at Marco will be modifying some of their DBQs that they've already made. So yeah, I would make sure though to preserve a visual source if you can, which in some cases may be a little tough for the Renaissance and the Reformation. But we're going to see. Okay, so yeah, I would say cutting out a couple documents could work just as long as we're keeping a visual source, a visual or graphic source in there. All right, which points on the rubric would we prioritize? Okay, so as far as that goes, Avery, I think that's a really good question. Okay, so let me go ahead and kind of go into this rubric and give you my take on what are going to be the easiest ways to get, like, let's say you want to get half of these points. Okay, so if we're thinking like, I want to get half the points on this rubric, and John apologizes for the difficulties. Of course, John owes us no apology. Okay, we are very happy to have had him here. So of course, thesis. Okay, you need to have a thesis statement. Okay, so you need to have a thesis statement. That is something that's going to be very important. So I would say that's one. Then accurately describes at least two. Okay, there you go. I would say that that's another one. Now, outside evidence, I would say you want to get both of those points for outside evidence. All right, you want to get both of those points for outside evidence. I think that especially since you've got your, open notes and you're going to have notes available, you want to make sure that you're ready to throw in some relevant outside evidence. So I would say there that you want to, you want to get the thesis point, you want to get the outside evidence points, you want to make sure to get this this first point for accurately describing. Now, wondering if you might be able to pass with 4, that would be really iffy. Okay, so I would say here that you want to get at least one of these support points and trying to get at least one of these points for explaining. Now, if some of y'all, contextualization, some people are good with that, some people are not, okay? So, that's one of those things. I wouldn't say that that's a point that everybody can get, okay? Because some people are going to be better at that than others. If you're good at contextualization, there's another point for you. But if you're trying to get like 5 out of 10, which I think would be, that would be a somewhat reliable recipe for passing. But I would say the thesis and the accurately describes, I would make sure that now I would say here, setting it up argumentatively and using 4 documents, that should not be very difficult. Okay, so I think here that, using the supports, but I think, 2 or 4 documents, getting at least one of these points, and then I would say getting this. Now, also, I would pick the easiest document to do point of view analysis. Okay, so I would go through the 5 documents and I would pick the one where you're like, okay, this one is the one where I'm going to do a really good point of view, purpose, historical situation, small c context or audience. Okay, I would do that for one of those, because you also have to think about, some of y'all are going to be able to get all of these points, but a lot of you aren't going to be able to get all 10. So I would not try to worry too much about complex understanding unless you're trying to get all 10. If that's the 10th point, then great. But I would focus on the historical evidence if that's a strength of yours, okay? Which again, that really should be everybody's strength. But you got to understand, the standard for historical evidence is not going to be just you named something, but I think that the standard's going to be higher here in the sense that it needs to be made relevant, okay? And it needs to obviously be something you generated on your own and you didn't copy it from a study guide or something like that, because that's one thing to note, that they're going to be using plagiarism checkers. And when I send out study guides and study materials, you definitely don't want to use the same words that are on there. In fact, what I'm thinking about now, that when I send out study guides, I may want to think about in terms of have one version where, okay, I'm explaining what this is, but then you would take it and have a blank version, and without consulting the original notes, you're putting into your own words, like, what is this thing or what is that thing, okay? So, or who is this person? So, there are going to be some strategies. Now, I'm just thinking out loud right now. These strategies are going to go a little bit deeper as we have time to process this. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud right now. But I would say that, try to get one of these points, okay? You may not, some of y'all may have a hard time in the time constraints doing both of these points, but I would say try to get one of those points. Okay, so we're going to show you some different strategies, and I think that the biggest thing here is thinking about, what is my 45-minute strategy and how many points am I trying to score? Now, again, I don't have any authority other than just thinking about it in terms of what is going to be a 3, a 4, or a 5. But I think that you're going to need to have a strategy to score at least half these points, because typically you've got a 7-point rubric and it's 2.5 points is about the average. So 3 out of 7. So is typically a safe bet for passing the exam. So in this case, I would say that you are looking to get at least 5. But I think the more ambitious you are, you need to have probably a 6-point strategy. And that may be what I'm going to recommend. So in this case, thesis accurately describes, that's 1, 2. One of these points for each, and then 2 pieces of outside evidence. And that would get you 6 points, okay? And with that, you wouldn't necessarily, with that strategy, worry about contextualization. You wouldn't worry about outside evidence, and you would leave one of these points on the table possibly for each. So, because really, with this, you really could use only 2 documents, okay? So think about this, where you can use 2 documents argumentatively to underscore your point here. You use a piece of outside evidence. So here's what's materializing in my mind. Your thesis or claim has a 2-pronged, line of reasoning. So it was this because of this and this. You will support each of those parts of your claim with 1 document, okay? So you will use 1 document argumentatively. Each body paragraph will have 1 document and 1 piece of supporting outside evidence, okay? And then the second paragraph will have 1 document or another piece of supporting outside evidence. Now, if you don't want to use outside evidence, there's another strategy that you could then focus on this, okay? So what you're going to need to do here with a DBQ, it's very important that you figure out what your strengths are and you play to your strengths, okay? So we're going to make sure to put those strategies out there, but I'm thinking that whatever it is, you need to have a strategy to score 6 points. And that needs to be, you need to have that strategy and you need to follow it, and add something to it if you want. The beautiful thing about a typed essay is if you have extra time, then you can go back and add contextualization if that's a weak point for you. So you can kind of construct this as you go, depending on how much time you have. So we'll talk about some formats as we go along. So with that, now, context, you could use, context that comes later. Okay, so that's something that we could be out. Now, any tips on writing a good DBQ without stressing out on time? Okay, so with that, if we think about, how could we do here? Now, if you're asking me, okay, Jack, at this point, if you have questions about complex understanding and you don't know what that is, you don't know how to score that point, forget it, okay? Just do not. Now, complex understanding is not 1 point out of 7. It's 1 point out of 10, okay? So when you think about the strategy here, now complex understanding, the hardest point to earn in the whole thing is now 1/10 of the essay versus 1/7. Get it out of here, okay? Unless you are just totally certain of your ability to do this. If you are asking questions about complex understanding, okay, just forget about it, okay? That is my advice to you, okay? Because that is now only a 10th, okay? So that's the thing that I'm going to say. Now, if you say there's no way that's the hardest point, okay? If you think about that, then, the hardest point, if it's not the hardest point, then do it. But if you're asking questions, forget about complex understanding because it's going to complicate your essay. You want to write the simplest essay possible. So as far as that goes, what we want to do here is let me make a Google Doc and let's kind of go into some different strategies of using your time to the best of your ability. Okay, using your time to the best of your ability. Now, again, I've got the updated rubric, which I can't post on Crowdcast again because I've already shared it, but I will post it in the YouTube chat. We'll go ahead and put that rubric out there. That is there, and let me go into my Google Drive. Okay, so I'm going to go into my Google Drive, and we are going to create kind of a, let's do a little bit of strategizing. Now, again, I'm thinking out loud here, but that's the sort of thing that we do, right? So let me go ahead and go into, I'm going to create a document here and I'll share it with y'all. I'm going to call this 2020 DBQ AP Euro DBQ strategy. Okay, so let me go ahead and share this document and go over a couple of things here. And I think that you need to be thinking about having a strategy to score, okay? Having a strategy to score at least like 6 points, okay? So looking at this, let's go ahead and I've shared the Google document here. So, and then I'm going to screen share, all right? So when we think about this, that it's going to be very difficult, first of all, okay? So let's think about this. It's going to be very difficult, first of all, to think about in terms of a, in terms of a, what am I calling this? In writing an essay without a thesis. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we're going to call this 6-point strategies. Okay, we're going to call this 6-point strategies for the AP Euro DBQ. Okay, so what we're going to note here is that now a 10-point, we've got the 6-point strategy. We could do an 8-point strategy and or a 10-point strategy. Okay, but what we're going to call this is, let's call this outside evidence heavy. Okay, so we're going to think about this. Now, we always want a thesis. So we're going to say that that's going to be part of that. Okay, so then we're going to be accurately describes 2 docs. That's always going to be part of our strategy for victory. Then we're going to get from there. Okay, so accurately describes 2. Then we're going to get into the documents. Okay, supports an argument. Okay, so we're going to say supports an argument with 2 will be part of this. And one piece, let's see, we're going to say POV plus for 1 doc, POV plus for 2nd doc. Okay, then we're going to see outside, and in fact, let's go. So then we're going to look at outside 1 piece. And again, complex understanding is one of the most time-consuming points to earn. I would say unless you're going for 10, don't worry about it, okay? So I would say here that we're going to do this, and then we're going to do point of view for 1 document, okay? So outside evidence heavy, and we're going to note here without context, okay? So without context. And then we could say here, some of y'all are better at context than others, but you know your strengths, okay? Now, what we could do here, we've got a 6-point strategy here, okay? Now, we could, we could now go into outside evidence heavy with context, okay? So then we get into something here where maybe instead of doing the POV plus, we would provide contextualization, okay? So that would be another way to do this, okay, is that you're providing contextualization there. So that would be something there. Now, if we think about another strategy that we might get into is that we've got the document heavy strategy. Now, the nice thing about this strategy is for those of you who are good at analyzing documents, we would note here that, this is using only documents, okay? Using only documents, we could do something here where we've got a thesis statement. We accurately describe 2. We support an argument with 2, actually with 4 of them, okay? And instead of this, we could do POV plus for 2 documents. Okay, now the thing about this strategy is you are only using what is there. So you can get You can get 6 points by only using what is there and not going for any outside evidence. Okay, so we've got here no outside evidence or context. Okay, so it is possible to do this. It is possible to get 6 points without any outside evidence or contextualization if you're good at analyzing the documents. Okay, so that is another strategy that we could get to with that. Okay, now then you're going to see, so these are 3 strategies for scoring 6 points that I would be prone to focus on there. Okay, so these would be 3 strategies that I think would be my top 3 in terms of that if you're trying to score 6 points. Now, that's something that none of these puts a lot of pressure on you. Now, when you go to 7, 8, 9, and 10, then you would just add to these. So these are 3 6-point strategies that I would put out there. And I don't see really a scenario where somebody scores 6 out of 10 points and they fail the exam. Okay, I don't see that happening. So with that, if I were going for, a 4, then I would think in terms of trying to get 8 points. If you're going for a 5, you probably won't need, I'm sure you'll be able to do a 5 with 9 points, but, you want to make sure that you're going for 10. Okay, so, for those seeking to make a 4 or 5, okay, so none of these 4, all of these formats should be possible in the 45-minute time period without applying undue pressure to yourself. Okay, if aiming for a 4 on the exam, okay, so if aiming for a 4 on the exam, I would recommend adding 2 more points. Okay, if aiming for a 5, I would I would recommend I would recommend trying to score all of the points. Okay, so if you're trying to get a 5, or 9, I think 9 should be enough there that if you're trying to do that. But if you're trying to get a 5, I would say try to do the whole thing. But these are 3 passing strategies that I think I'm going to work with, and all of these can be modified. Okay, so hopefully you find those helpful, but those are 3 strategies. And again, I would not worry about complex understanding. Okay, if you're not trying to get a 5, so complex understanding only makes up 10%. Okay, so 10% of this rubric. Okay, so unless you are going for a 5, I would not recommend, attempting this. Okay, this is, we think about this. What I have in mind here is, okay, so what's the voice that's going through my head right now is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Don't do it, Anakin. I have the high ground. That's what I'm thinking about here. Okay, so when we think about this, that it's one of those things that if you try to get complex understanding on this essay, most of you are going to end up like Anakin Skywalker at the end of Revenge of the Sith, or do we call him Darth Vader by that point? But certainly Obi-Wan called him Anakin at that point. But yeah, the College Board has the high ground, and if you really want to try it, I just would not recommend it for most people, especially exactly. It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. All right. Oh my goodness, sounded like Alex Jones there. All right. So with that, but yes, make sure to understand that if you're trying to score a passing score, I would recommend a 6-point strategy. That is, the College Board doesn't even know for sure what passing will be. I just don't see a scenario where someone does not pass the exam getting 6 points on this rubric. And remember, the standard for outside evidence, we need to remember that that's going to be pretty high for them to count that. Okay. So, well, there, Olivia, that is a great question. And I don't know if the College Board is going to tell us about that. Okay. So, what I would recommend, you're saying here, are there multiple versions of the test, or will we all take the same DBQ? I'm going to guess that, especially since they have multiple versions when they do it in secure settings, I think that yeah, those of you who think I'm just going to get on a big group chat and we're going to do this DBQ together or something like that, I don't think it's going to be that easy. Also, if you're using the same evidence as everybody else in your class, that's going to be red flags. So I would say that let's consider your question, Olivia, to be irrelevant. That we really, one of the biggest things here is you want to take this exam on your own. Okay, that is my advice. That is going to be what's best for you. You want to take this exam on your own. You don't want to try to team up with friends. So the only way your question is relevant is if you're planning to do this as a group work thing. I would not recommend it. I would not recommend that. Okay. So we have evidently Davika is an OG. We got several OGs here. So that's something I would note here. And with that, tips on writing a good thesis. Okay, a good thesis is not going to be any different than writing a good thesis at any other point. The requirements of the thesis have not changed. Now, if you're still asking for tips on how to write a good thesis, oof. Okay, press F to pay respects, y'all, because this is a bit problematic. All right, now. At the same time, we're here to help. I will be putting stuff out there that's going to help you on this. Okay, so we're going to get into that, but remember that the requirements for the thesis have not changed. Okay, and so as far as that goes, Frank, remember the expectation is still going to be a rough draft. So if you're typing, you're probably going to revise while you're writing. Okay, that's the thing about typing an essay is most people are going to revise while they're writing, and the expectation of this being a rough draft is the same. So I would not think about revising. I would not think about trying to be super eloquent. I would treat this the same way that you treat this when it is, when it's paper pencil, when it's under secure conditions. Don't try to be like Winston Churchill or anyone like that trying to, wow everyone with your eloquence and oratorical skills. Okay. So I would say that when you're going through this, be cognizant of your time and make sure that, yeah, I wouldn't think about a revision phase per se. I would be typing to get it right the first time. Like when you're writing a handwritten exam, you're not revising during that. So I would not think about a revision phase. I think that's very risky. All right. So what do you think would be pinpoint in-depth review from a teacher standpoint? I'm going to begin with, I've been focusing this week on the Renaissance and the Reformation. I think now that we've got the exam in hand, we want to think about in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 full weeks. Okay, so we've got 5 full weeks between the now and the exam. Okay, so when we think about this, like you think about next week being perhaps Renaissance and Reformation, then you go to absolutism and the scientific revolution, then you get into now it may be that you go into absolutism all in 1 week, the age of absolutism, because there's a lot there, and possibly the scientific revolution. After which point I might go into the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, or perhaps give the French Revolution its own week, then go into the Industrial Revolutions and isms, and then this first week of May go into imperialism and nationalism and the things going on in the late 19th century. So for me, that's what's shaping up. I would say week 1, Renaissance and Reformation. Then week 2, get into absolutism and the scientific revolution. So that's dividing up, that's proposing dividing up unit 4 and doing part of that, in one case, part of it in the other. And then the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, unless you think the French Revolution could use its own week. But then again, I don't know if I'd go that, but I would pair up the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, then the Industrial Revolutions and isms, and then get into the late 19th century in the week before the exam. So that would be my proposal right off the top of my head for review, putting it into a 5-week review. And then, of course, we've got the days leading up to the exam where we'll get some very focused review there. That's going to span periods and basically every week working on some skill-based stuff to go along with the DBQ. Okay, so with that, I would recommend that. Now, do you think the documents will be shorter and less dense? Renee, great to see you, Renee. A pleasure, and good to see teachers in here. I don't know about the word count in the documents. Now, it could be because when I'm thinking about this, now the thing to do when the College Board puts out a sample, that's going to be, we will run that through. Sophia at Marco Learning does a great job of going through those things, getting word counts, and we'll have that information to you. Okay, we're going to have to see when the College Board puts out a sample item, and that hasn't happened yet. But as soon as the College Board puts a sample item out, we're going to be able to have some answers on that. Now, I would not bank on that until we see something from the College Board that suggests that that's the case. But I think that so far, the impression I get is the College Board had to first put this rubric together, and then we'll be getting some more information soon. All right, so with that, thank you very much, Renee, for being here. And I don't know, Lucia, I'm not so sure about this thing here going from the secure browser. That's a test question, and I don't think that I'm necessarily someone with a great deal of expertise or anything like that. All right, so with that, let's see. We'll see what happens with that. Now, going on, and I'm going to need to stop this broadcast in a bit. Okay, so make sure to sign up for the Marco Learning thing tomorrow that we've got going on. I've already posted the link to that. You should be able to find it on marcolearning.com. How should we manage our time? Okay, so Sid, it's going to be, we're going to put some stuff out there. We're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to test it and sort of see what happens. The main thing, Sid, is it's going to depend on you. There's got to be some flexibility here because not everybody reads at the same pace. Not everybody writes at the same pace. So the best way to do this is to answer your own question. Okay, answer your own question by practicing each week. I would recommend between now and then a DBQ a week, and my friends at Marco Learning and I will be taking care of you during that. Okay, can I make a chart with key events? Short answer to that question is yes. It looks like the College Board, since they have sanctioned using notes, I will be putting together some things to have so that you can have handy while you are preparing, okay? And will you be able to annotate and print the docs, Becky? I don't think so. So another thing that we're going to be putting out there will be an annotation sheet. So let's make sure that we're noting that there's going to be something for your annotations. And so what do you want to say? Basically, what does this document say? What would you do to paraphrase this document? And then there will be a part like, what about your POV plus, okay? Or what could this document, what argument could this support? So we're going to have an annotation sheet that you will be able to print out and put together. So a sheet that's going to let you annotate all 5 documents, put a T-chart together, and all of that. Okay, so we're going to make sure to note that. It seems like they're going to focus heavily on themes. Now, focus, that's going to be interesting, Nicole. And we're going to have to see what the College Board puts out. Okay, so we're going to see what the College Board puts out and what would happen if we don't finish all of the DBQ. Shreya, you need to finish. Okay, even if it's unfinished, you need to submit what you have when it's time to submit. Okay, so you need to make sure that you bring that in. Okay. So with that, again, Kevin, Very interesting question. I don't know how to answer that for you at this time. So we're going to see that. Now, how are they going to proctor this? They're not going to proctor it. You're not going to be proctored during this exam, but they are going to, they are going to be able to see. I mean, they're not stupid. They're going to be able to see if people in the same class were working together. If your essay seems very similar to someone else, they will be running this stuff through plagiarism protection software. And from what I'm reading, if you think you can avoid plagiarism detection by handwriting, probably not. Okay, so that's not going to be as easy as you think it is. All right, what if you log on too late? James, that's a great question, but you're just going to have to log on time. Okay, I would be sitting at the computer 15 minutes before the exam time. That would be my recommendation. Ethan, again, I would expect this to be something that I would expect this to be something that is different. I would expect there to be different forms of the test that are going to be basically randomly decided. Now, Mikey, when you're asking about things like synthesis and contextualization, I wouldn't be asking those questions at this point. I would be really trying to focus on those things that you do know right now. What used to be synthesis is now part of complex understanding. So, but I would not be getting into those weeds right now. All right, so does it depend on how well they do? Cole, different universities from year to year, they have different policies on accepting a 3 and a 4 or a 5. So you'll need to look at the college or university that you are, applying to, and that's going to be the same as everything else. All right, so with that, we get into Roger. It is going to be the same general rubric for APUSH. I need to make sure that APUSH has also lifted the time restrictions. Okay, so whether this could be start at 1491, whether it could start at 1607, I'm not sure. Okay, so what are the odds of this being the format for next year? I don't think those odds are high. Now, again, I'm going to go ahead and stop this broadcast, but I will be broadcasting some more tomorrow. We've got a webinar with Marco Learning tomorrow that we want to make sure that we are, that we're getting into. I'm going to post one more link to that webinar with Marco Learning. So make sure that if you are an AP Euro student, that you want to join us there. Okay, so Marco Learning webinar Saturday. Okay, so we've got that. All right, so understand that we've got Marco Learning webinar for Saturday. Okay, so with that, thank y'all for supporting my work, for being here together. We are going to give you things to tackle. Okay, now the thing is though, James, do you know this information? It's typically, I don't know, we'll have to see, but what do we know about that? I'm not sure. Okay, James, I don't know if you're saying that because or you're just guessing. Typically, DBQs will start at the so-called period 3, but I don't think that I would bring that to the bank right now. Okay, so let's wait for the smoke to clear and see what happens there. But I have heard that Euro, it is 1450 to 1914, so it doesn't start at 1600 like usual. All right, thank you, Jamie. I'm so glad for your support, your student support, and I'm going to dip without answering. Let's see, is there another question here? Support the Shivam to 2040 campaign. Ask me again in 20 years. Okay, ask me again in 20 years. I may not still be here in 20 years. That's a long way away. All right, so with that, we're going to, go into that, and we will, we'll have some more information soon. So with that, it is always a pleasure, and thank you for joining me.